Boy Who Harnessed the Wind by William Kamkwamba and Brian Miller. Chapter 1, continued, page 7. So Mwaze returned to Lilongwe and got his family, and before long he'd established a thriving empire. His farmland produced abundant maize and vegetables that fed the entire region. His people were strong, and his warriors were powerful and feared. But around this time, a great chaos erupted in the Zulu kingdom of South Africa. The army of the Zulu king, Shaka, began a bloody campaign to conquer the lands surrounding his kingdom, and this path of terror and destruction caused millions to flee. One such group was the Nyoni. The Nyoni people marched north for many months and finally stopped in Chua territory, where the soil was moist and fertile. But because they were constantly on the move, hunger visited them often. When this happened, they would travel further north and ask for help from Chief Mwaze, who always assisted them with maize and goats. One day, after accepting another of Mwaze's handouts, the Nyoni chiefs sat down and said, "How can we always have this kind of food?" Someone replied, "Eliminate the Chua." The Nyoni were led by Chief Nwambe, whose plan was to capture the rock of the edible flies and all the land visible from its peak. However, the Nyoni did not know how magical Chief Mwaze was. One morning, the Nyoni came up the mountain and dressed in animal skins, holding massive shields in one hand and spears in the other. But of course, Chief Mwaze's warriors had spotted them from miles away. By the time the Nyoni reached the hill, the Chua warriors had disguised themselves as green grass and slayed the intruders with knives and spears. The last man to die was Chief Nwambe. For this reason, the mountain was changed from the rock of the edible flies to Nyuru ya Nwambe, which means simply the deadly defeat of Nwambe. This same hill now casts a long shadow over the city of Kasungu, just near my village. These stories had been passed down from generation to generation, with my father having learned them from my grandpa. My father's father was so old he couldn't remember when he was born. His skin was so dry and wrinkled, his feet looked like they were chiseled from stone. His overcoat and trousers seemed older than he was, the way they were patched and hung on his body like the bark of an ancient tree. He rolled fat cigars from maize husks and field tobacco, and his eyes were red from cachazo, a maize liquor so strong it left weaker men blind. Grandpa visited us once or twice a month. Whenever he emerged from the edge of the trees in his long coat and hat, a trail of smoke rising from his lips, it was as if the forest itself had taken legs and walked. The stories Grandpa told were from a different time and place. When he was young, before the government maize and tobacco estates arrived and cleared most of our trees, the forests were so dense a traveller could lose his sense of time and direction in them. Here the invisible world hovered closer to the ground, mixing with the darkness in the groves. The forest was home to many wild beasts, such as antelope, elephant, and wildebeest, as well as hyenas, lions, and leopards, adding even more to the danger. When Grandpa was a boy, his grandmother was attacked by a lion. She was working in her fields at the forest's edge, scaring away some monkeys, when a female lion came upon her. Villagers heard her cries and quickly sounded the drum. Not the fast, rhythmic beat for dances or ceremonies, but something slow, and serious. They call this emergency beat the Musudabwe, meaning, "Don't ask questions, just come." It's like dialing 999 or 112 in Italy. But instead of police, you're calling other villagers. By the time Grandpa and others arrived with their spears and bows and arrows, it was too late. They saw the lion, its body the size of a cow, drag his grandmother into the thorny trees, then toss her body into the bush like a mouse. It then turned and faced its challengers, let out a terrible roar, and disappeared with its kill. The poor woman's body was never recovered. Grandpa says that once a lion gets a taste for human blood, it won't stop until it's eaten an entire village. So the next morning, someone notified the British authorities, who still controlled our country. They sent soldiers into the forest and shot the lion. Its body was then displayed in the village square for all to see. Not long after, Grandpa was hunting alone in the forest and came upon a man who'd been bitten by a cobra. The snake had been hiding in the trees and struck the man's head as he passed. His skin quickly turned grey, and minutes later, he was dead. Grandpa alerted the nearest village, who arrived with their witch doctor. The wizard placed one foot atop the dead man's chest and tossed some medicines into the forest. Seconds later, the moist ground came alive as hundreds of cobras slithered out from the shadows and gathered around the corpse, hypnotized by the spell. The wizard crouched on the dead man's chest and drank a cup of magic porridge, which flowed through his feet and into the lifeless body. The dead man's fingers began to move, then his hands. "Let me up," he said, then stood and faced the army of serpents. Together they checked the fangs of every cobra in attendance, searching for the one that had killed the man. Usually, the wizard would quickly cut off the head of the guilty snake, but this time, the dead man took pity and allowed the cobra to live. For his services, the wizard was paid £3 British. My grandpa saw this with his very own eyes. When my father was a young man, he often went hunting with his father. Even then, the forest was so dangerous that hunters observed a sacred ritual before their outings. Hunts were usually initiated by one man, the Mwini Chisokole, or owner of the hunt, who called together all the willing men from the surrounding villages. The owner decided where and when the hunt would take place, and in the event of a kill, he'd receive the choicest portion of the meat, usually the hind quarter, which is the back end. Grandpa was often this person. On the night before the hunt, the leader wasn't allowed to sleep with his wife, not even in the same room. The purpose was to keep the man's focus and attention as sharp as possible, and to guarantee a solid night's rest. Losing focus made you careless in the forest, and worst of all, left you open to bewitching. That night, sleeping alone at a neighbour's house or in a separate hut with his sons, the leader would boil a pot of red maize mixed with certain roots and medicines, which he'd distribute the following morning to each hunter in the party. This was part of the magic, because everyone believed this protected them from danger. Before setting out, the hunters also instructed their wives to stay indoors until the hunt was over, preferably lying in bed and sleeping. They thought this would cause the animals to sleep as well, allowing the hunters to sneak up on them with ease. Walking through the forest as a boy, I didn't worry so much about cobras or lions, since most of them had vanished. But other dangers were waiting in the forests that remained, and along the quiet, empty fields where the ghosts of trees seemed to whisper their sadness. Walking there alone, one of my greatest fears was the Gule Wamkulu. The Gule Wamkulu were a secret gang of dancers. They performed at the chief's requests at funerals and initiation ceremonies, where many Chua boys become men. The Gulu Wamkulu were said to be the spirits of our dead ancestors, resurrected from the afterworld and sent to roam the earth. No longer human, they shared the skin of animals, and their faces resembled the beasts of hell. Twisted devil birds and demons howling in fright. When the Gulu Wamkulu performed, you dared to watch only from a distance. Often they appeared from the bush, walking on stilts, towering above the crowd and screaming in different tongues. Once, I even saw one of them climb a blue gum pole while upside down, like a spider. And when they danced, 1,000 men seemed to inhabit their bodies, each moving in the opposite direction. When the Gulu Wamkulu weren't performing, they travelled the forests and marshes looking for young boys to take back to the graveyards. What happened to you there? I never wanted to know. It was bad luck to even speak about the Gulu Wamkulu, and God help you if you were ever caught doubting them, saying, "Look at their hands. They have 5 fingers like me. These guys are not real." Doing this would surely get you bewitched. And since the Gulu Wamkulu answered only to the chief, there'd be no one to defend you. When they appeared in the village, every woman and child dropped what they were doing and ran. Once, when I was very young, a magic dancer appeared in our courtyard, strutting like a cock and hissing like a snake. His head was wrapped in a flour sack with a black hole for a mouth and a long trunk for a nose. My mother and father were in the fields, so my sisters and I ran for the trees, only to watch this passing ghost steal one of our chickens. Donkeys are the only creatures not afraid of Gulu Wamkulu. If the donkey sees one of these dancers, it will chase them into the bush and kick them with its mighty legs. Don't ask me why, but the donkey is very brave. I tried to be courageous like my friend, the donkey, whenever I walked through the forest. But witches and wizards never reveal their identity, so you never know where their traps lie waiting. In these places where they practice, their potent magic takes on many shapes. Men with bald heads, 20 feet tall, are said to appear on the roads outside of Nichisi. A few at first, then dozens all around. Ghost trucks drive the same roads at night, coming on fast with their bright lights flashing and engines revving loud. But as the lights pass by, no truck is attached. No tire marks are left on the road, and if you're driving a car, your engine will die until morning. Da, da, da. Magic hyenas wander the villages at night, snatching several goats at once in their razor jaws and delivering them to the doorsteps of wizards. Magic lions are sent to kill delinquent debtors, and snakes the size of tractors can lie in wait for you in your fields.